So let's talk about anxiety. Now I'm going to ask you a very, very, very interesting yet difficult question. Maybe one that you didn't even have the courage to ask yourself. How would your life look without anxiety? Now, if you're like most people, you will have had some degree of anxiety your whole life. I've been there. I know how it feels. Of course, different people, different flavors of anxiety, but anxiety is a huge inhibitor, right? And we don't actually realize just how much we've inhibited ourselves, because it's been so familiar. It's been there all along. You know, we've never known other ways of living, right? What if anxiety just went away? How about if it thawed and drifted away, just like ice becoming water and then evaporating altogether? How would your life look without anxiety? Well, guess what? Emotional acupuncture can actually make this happen. I'm going to tell you a story. This is about one of my patients. I'm going to call him Andrew, not his real name. Right, so actually Andrew came to me for anxiety. This is a true story, right? True case. When I say true case, it kind of makes me laugh because I've had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of cases like these with all the flavors. But this is the one that is one of the most recent ones, right? So anyway, he was plagued by this insecurity, and his whole life was paralyzed. He was, physically tense. His anxiety had a flavor of depression. This all started when actually his father passed away. And he had a rather distant relationship with his father, and of course, like any traumatized inner child, right, he'd always hoped somewhere deep inside in his subconscious that maybe at some point he would have the chance of getting a closer relationship with his father. Well, that all went away when his father died. So that was the trigger for his anxiety and depression, right? So anyway, he came to me as a patient, and I did treatments with emotional acupuncture. Now, what is emotional acupuncture? Emotional acupuncture is, actually, it shouldn't even be called that, right? Because acupuncture, at its root, is a holistic way of healing, right? It's based in Chinese medicine, the Chinese way of seeing things, the ancient Oriental way of understanding the human being, with the physical, the mental, the emotional, and the spiritual side of it. The problem with acupuncture nowadays is that most practitioners, for some reason, have only been taught the physical kind of acupuncture, not the deeper kind. I was lucky enough, I was fortunate enough to also have the opportunity to learn the deeper part of acupuncture. So anyway, I was treating Danny, and his evolution was absolutely amazing, right? From this very timid young man, within a few months, not only did his anxiety diminish, and he turned into a truly amazing young man who was standing much more upright, who was, smiling, who was much more self-confident, who got a new girlfriend, who of course was able to, leave the antidepressants and anxiety pills aside, and so he was able to do all that, and his life transformed. But when we talk about anxiety, it's not only, and this is one of the things that I always talk with my patients about, it's not only about negating the negative, right? It's not only about neutralizing the threat, right? Neutralizing the bad stuff. Because neutralizing the bad stuff is, okay, I'm leaving anxiety behind, right? It's also, at least in the Chinese medical way of thinking, cultivating the good stuff, cultivating well-being. Because you know what? Anxiety, as I said, is a great inhibitor, but when you actually counter it, it's not like when you take pills. Why? Because if you take anxiety pills, the anxiety actually does not go away. The anxiety is merely inhibited, as in numbed, right? You don't feel it. It is there, but you don't feel it. When you actually treat it with emotional acupuncture, what happens is that you actually treat it, right? You get to the cause of it. And how do you do that? How does acupuncture do that? Well, there are different causes of anxiety. For example, right, there are 5 elements in Chinese medicine, right? We have wood, we have fire, we have earth, we have metal, we have water, right? And the 2 main types of anxiety pertain to the earth element and to the metal element. Now, the earth element has to do with anxiety coming from insecurity. Now, this kind of security that I'm referring to should have been cultivated by our relationship with our parents, our relationship with the home, right, as in the hearth, right, the hearth of the home, that safe environment in which we feel that we're secure, we're safe, we feel loved, we feel cared for, we feel that our roots are strong and deep, and we have a good solid foundation for our beginning of our life, right? Now, most people don't have that. Actually, nobody has the perfect childhood, but some people have it much more imperfect than others, right? But don't think that, if you're thinking right now that you had the perfect childhood, chances are you're probably some of the most traumatized there, right? Because there is no perfect childhood, and usually the more you come to perfection, the closer you come to perfection in terms of childhood, the more you will be aware of the imperfections, right? Because you're generally more aware. If you had a really traumatic childhood, you don't even know what normality looks like. And anyway, this is very, very complex. Anyway, let's come back to anxiety. So, as I was saying, anxiety, when we treat it, it's not only about not feeling anxiety anymore. It's also about cultivating these feelings that the lack of have generated anxiety, right? If we didn't have enough attention or love or care from our mothers, we're going to be naturally anxious. If we saw our parents fight all the time, argue all the time, we didn't feel safe in that environment, we're going to feel, anxious. If they left us with our grandparents or with, some other people, and they were absent, our parents, right, for a significant portion of time, as in like months or years, right, that cultivates anxiety because you've probably felt abandoned. Even though, you might have gotten very close to the people that took care of you, the absence of the parents, the physical or emotional absence of the parents, has cultivated anxiety, right? So, you come to acupuncture, we do some treatments with emotional acupuncture, what happens? Well, in the first phase, you feel better, right? You feel that there is you feel safer, anxiety goes away, but this is just the beginning, right? Because what happens is, as I was saying, if you have the earth kind of anxiety, this kind of anxiety has the idea of stability. Now, in order for me to help you understand what happens, is I need to explain to you a little bit of the psychological dynamics going on. If you don't feel safe, what are you going to do? How is your relationship with conflict going to be? You're going to avoid conflict, right? Because if you're unstable as a, fundamental state for you, if you're unstable, if you're insecure, of course you're going to avoid conflict, because conflict means, you're going to fight someone. So fighting someone means that somebody's going to try and shake you off, and you're going to try and shake them off, and the idea is that if you have difficulty standing on your own 2 feet, this whole concept is just not even conceivable. You're not going to enter into a conflict if you can't even stand on your own 2 feet, so you're going to avoid conflict. Well, guess what? Life is full of conflict. Even when you're doing very simple stuff, like, talking with your friends about what restaurant to go to. Maybe you have a preference. Maybe they have a different preference. Do you stand up for your preference, right? Or do you just give in? Do you usually give in to other people? I'm going to tell you that you do. Maybe you're aware of it, maybe not, right? Many people who are avoiding conflict think of it as in, oh, I just like peace and quiet. So, I'll let you have your way. Okay, your way, not my way. But if I'm always letting you and everybody else have their way, won't I be frustrated? The hell I will, of course. I definitely will. So basically behind the anxiety is a whole incredible level of anger, of frustration, of conflict that has not been able to come out, right? Because it was inhibited, because conflict could generate even more instability, and instability was, too much already, so it was inhibited. So guess what? When you come and we treat the anxiety, true enough, anxiety goes away. There's a lot more self-assuredness coming up, and guess what you'll find? A lot of anger, right? So we need to address that. Beyond that anger, what lies? Well, you might not even actually see it as anger. You might see the physical symptoms of it, right? You may say, oh, but I'm not angry. Well, guess what? Chinese medicine enables us to see beyond the words, beyond the emotions, because it lets the body talk, right? For example, okay, you're not angry. Do you have headaches? Do you have migraines? Do you have, dizziness or vertigo? Do you have a hypersensitivity to light, as in photophobia? Do you have a hypersensitivity to loud noises? Do you get irritated easily? Do you have a premenstrual syndrome? Do you get bloating, which is not necessarily associated with food, but it's just there, no matter what you eat, you're bloated anyway, right? All these are liver symptoms. By the way, even one of the most, let's say, juiciest symptoms, but it's not juicy at all, low sex drive, right? Low sex drive, and a general feeling of tiredness, and of, I don't give a fuck, just leave me, I just want to be left alone, I just want to, travel the world and just go and hide under a rock on the other side of the earth, right? You recognize this? This is what is called in Chinese medicine liver qi stagnation, right? This is your liver which is suffering. Its energy is blocked, with hence the name qi stagnation. Qi, by the way, is the name for energy, right? And it's suffering, because the emotion associated with the liver, which is the spectrum of anger, frustration, conflict generally, right? Anger, frustration, being unhappy for whatever reason, because you're not happy with the way things are going, it's going to suffer, right? So basically, anxiety hides all these problems. And by the way, I almost missed one of the key symptoms, panic attacks. Do you have panic attacks? Do you know anyone who does have panic attacks? Most of the time, when people come to me for panic attacks, what are actually panic attacks? The emotions are overwhelming you. But they're overwhelming you because there's such intense pressure from the subconscious bubbling up, and there's an inner conflict with the conscious mind being overwhelmed by this, almost volcanic eruption of emotion. And there's, part of it that wants to keep it repressed because it's too much, and part of it that is just, like an overfilling dustbin that is just, coming up, garbage and oozing all out, right? So that's because there's a lot of emotions that are pent up in there, and 80-90% of those emotions are anger. Now, why do we repress anger so much? Because it's the most conflictual, right? It's the most against stability, and any imperfection in our childhood will entail some degree of anxiety. So, and by the way, this is just the earth type of anxiety. There's also the metal type of anxiety, and that one, brace yourself, right? Okay, goes through lack of self-esteem or self-worth. I'm not good enough. Perfectionism, huh? Does that sound familiar to you? Right, well, guess what? When you finally get your self-worth up, there's a realization that, hey, you know, actually I realize I'm worthy now, but actually I realize in hindsight, all this is subconscious, I realize in hindsight that I was worthy all this time, right? So that means there was a whole injustice done to me because I deserved better all this time, my whole fucking childhood, right? Guess how much anger that's gonna come up with, right? So anyway, there's a level beyond that, right? We can clear the anger, we can clear the frustration. What's beyond that? Beyond that lies power. Beyond that lies the power to actually live your life according to who you are, according to your spine, according to your identity, according to the things that you believe in. Beyond that lies the power to be yourself, to be authentic. That's where acupuncture can take you, right? But there's another level still. Remember Danny's story, right? Actually, I applied something that was even superior to emotional acupuncture, and that is called karmic acupuncture. And karmic acupuncture relies on something called Chinese astrology. Basically, what we look for in order to be able to practice this kind of therapy is we look at the astrological chart, the Chinese astrological chart, because that tells us, based on the date of birth, date and hour of birth, right? What your energetic structure is at a very, 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 very detailed level. And the idea is we can actually see the true level of what it is that makes you anxious. Where is that anxiety coming from, right? Because I've just given you 2 examples of anxiety, but actually it's much more complex, okay? But this astrological chart can actually enable us to see beyond. So follow me in the next video and we'll speak a little bit more about this Chinese astrology stuff, because it is really, really empowering and it can really bring out a lot of opportunities for you. I'll see you in the next video.